I have devoted months to building planes in Create Aeronautics. I've made dozens of designs, from small ones to big ones, cheap ones to fancy ones, normal ones to the most ridiculous things you've ever seen. I've spent hundreds of hours honing my skills for this moment. Today I present the perfect Create Aeronautics airplane. So on the surface you might be thinking, this just looks like a normal airplane with a bunch of redstone on it. What makes this so perfect? And that's exactly right. It's just a simple basic concept, but perfectly optimized in every way. So I've found ways to include tons of super useful features that make this plane just so much better than just about any other plane you can make in vanilla Create Aeronautics. But what do I actually mean by like perfect or better? And in this case, I'm talking about usefulness in survival Minecraft. So there are other planes that can go faster or that have more responsive controls or stuff like that. But most of the time, those planes are just completely impractical to actually use. You know, you'll see planes that are made with creative motors or that power their engines with creative blaze cakes. And those kinds of things make the plane seem better than it actually is. But this plane is the culmination of all my experience making planes in survival and finding all the things that make certain ones better and more useful than others. So let's start by giving it a flight test in survival. So I'll just climb up using the handle, get on, and then I just press G to turn it on, and we go. Have you ever seen a vanilla Create Aeronautics plane that you can just turn on with one press of a button? And you can see it flies very nicely. It's pretty fast. It's around 40-45 meters per second. The controls are quite responsive. You can see you can make pretty tight turns like that. And then it also has a rudder for yaw control. My cars. You can do some nice acrobatics. And it's super easy to land. So smooth. And when I'm done, all I have to do is press one button to turn it off and drop down. And that's it. No more fuel in the engines. I don't have to even take it out and put it back. We're just done. Now let's compare that to a more typical Create Aeronautics plane. So this is my basic design that I've made 1,000 times. So what you do is you take some charcoal, put one stack in each of the engines, then you go up to the seat, and you can fly. And this plane is also pretty nice. It's not as fast. It only goes about 30-35 meters per second. But it's pretty easy to fly, and you can land it pretty nicely as well. Not bad. But then when I want to stop, I have to come down here, take the charcoal out of all the engines, put it all back in the barrel, and then I'm done. So as you can see, one of the biggest innovations in my perfect plane is this fueling system. It's a completely automatic fueling system. All you have to do is press the button, which flips this lever, and that turns on all these engines. So the droppers spit one piece of fuel into each engine, and then this comparator detects when it's about to run out of fuel, and it sends a signal up to this redstone link, which then activates all the droppers again, putting more fuel into the engines. And so this means you can use whatever kind of fuel you want. So if you want to use like coal blocks or kelp blocks or something, it'll use the entire piece of fuel until it has about 10 seconds left. And that's when it'll insert another piece of fuel. And dude, this system took so much engineering to get working. There are so many weird little quirks with the redstone that you just totally wouldn't expect. So you can see like there's some weird things, like this dropper is over here on the side while these other ones are on the bottom. Then I also have my directional gear shift one block further behind my torsion spring than usual. And that's because this redstone link was interfering with this dropper for some reason. You know, a redstone link right here shouldn't be able to trigger this dropper. But because of some weird quasi-connectivity, bud switch kind of stuff, sometimes this redstone link could cause this dropper to shoot an extra piece of charcoal into the engine. Or sometimes it would prevent it from shooting. And so I had to design things really carefully. See, this redstone link was doing the same thing, so that's why this one had to be over here. And then I also had to design this whole circuit, which was really awkward to get this all working properly. And as I was building it, it just kept having problems over and over again, to the point where when I was testing it later, after I had it actually working, you know, every time I'd land the plane, I'd come back and say, oh, are my droppers putting extra fuel into the engines? Is there any extra? But every time I would come and see, oh my gosh, it's perfect. Once I figured it all out, it never has any issues. So even without all the rest of the upgrades, just this system alone, I think, makes planes so much more useful and practical in survival. Not having to put the fuel in and take it out over like every time for even just a little trip is just so nice. And it also makes it practical to have like more than 4 engines on one plane. You know, most of the time you're really just limited by how practical it is to put fuel into all your engines. But if you have a system like this, you can put as many as you want. But there are still a bunch of other upgrades I made to this plane over our base design. And let's first talk about the rudder. So on my basic plane design, I usually don't have a rudder, and that's mainly because there just aren't enough controls for it on a normal controller. So you need, your forward, backward, your left to right, and your up down, and then you're left with nothing left for your rudder. And the rudder also takes up lots of extra stress units for the extra torsion spring and mechanical bearing to turn it. But if you have more engines, then you can afford to use more stress units. And then of course I just use a typewriter instead of a normal controller so that I can have the controls for this. So this is controlled with your Q and E buttons. And then you can see only part of the tail is actually being turned by this bearing. There's a stationary section here. And that's really important for the proper stability and control. And so I had to make sure to make these not connected to each other so that this won't turn the whole thing. Now the next feature of this plane is this. This plane is able to throttle its propeller output. So you can go down to 0, or you can have it just a little bit lower than normal. But the max is 13, and that's controlled with this little red zone system back here. So there's an accumulator, and that's where your controls go into. So I have it set to R and F to increase and decrease your throttle. And then this output gets 2 subtracted from it. So this redstone link is just connected to this analog lever down here, which is on a strength of 2. And so if this goes up to 15, it'll subtract 2 and output 13. So that's how it sets the max to 13. And this is mainly useful just so that you're not going too fast when you're trying to just maneuver around the runway, which is again, not a very flashy thing, but it's actually really useful when you're trying to move around in tight spaces on the ground and get in position to take off. And then finally, the last small optimization I made is just the landing gear. I just put wheels on here, and these turn with you while you turn the rudder. So it helps you maneuver around the runway easily. And I think these are just so much better than having something like grindstones on a normal plane, because it just makes it so much easier to move around on the ground. Again, it's just a really optimized version of this normal plane. It's not that flashy. It's still pretty small, and that's another big advantage of this compared to a lot of other planes, is that it can actually fit on your runways or in your hangars, but it just takes a solid base design and upgrades just about every feature of it. And then if you want, you could easily, slap some dispensers on this to give it bombing capabilities, or slap on some guns, or decorate it however you want. Actually, I kind of like this color scheme. That's the plane. I hope you like it. And I would love to know if you guys have any suggestions on how to make this plane even more perfect. All I can think of right now is maybe add a couple more engines to make it a little bit faster, but I love it at this speed right now already. Also, I've been thinking of setting up a Discord server for this community. I thought it would be cool to have a place for people to just chat about aeronautics and share ideas. And I'd even like to host some events, like maybe some private Minecraft servers or PvP events. I don't know. So if you're interested in that, please tell me in the comments, so I can see if that's something if we actually want to do. But yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you like this, please like and subscribe. And see ya.